The Hollow Whisper. The old manor loomed at the edge of the village like a sentinel of shadows. Its slate roof sagged under decades of neglect, the chimneys crooked like broken fingers. Windows, rimmed with curling paint and filmy glass, reflected the grey, weeping sky, fractured in uneven shards. A cold wind stirred the dead leaves in the overgrown garden, carrying with it a faint, hollow moan. Or was it the wind? The villagers said. The house had always whispered, even when no one lived within it. Clara had been warned. Mothers pulled children away from the perimeter. Shopkeepers muttered curses under their breath. And old men shook their heads with the certainty of stories repeated too often. Curiosity had been a constant companion. That night, with a lantern in one hand and a notebook in the other, she stepped onto the cracked cobblestone path. Each stone was slick with moss, slick enough to make her shoes squeak. The air was dense, carrying the sharp temps of mildew, and something darker, iron, copper, like blood, long dried. The heavy door groaned as she pushed it open, sending a shiver crawling up her spine. Dust motes drifted in the lantern's pale circle of light, tiny dancers performing for no audience. The hall stretched before her, silent except for the hollow echo of her footsteps on the warped floorboards. The air was still, too still, making each breath feel amplified, intrusive. Every picture frame she passed seemed to watch her. Faces frozen mid-smile, mid-laugh, their glass eyes glinting with an almost imperceptible sheen. The wallpaper, once delicate with floral designs, peeled in jagged strips, curling like the tongues of dark flames. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper brushed past her ear. Clara. Her heart stuttered. She spun, the lantern swinging wildly. The corridor stretched on endlessly, lined with closed doors, all holding secrets she could feel pressing against them. The whisper returned, faint but insistent, threading the air like smoke. Clara. It came from above, the top of the grand staircase, the wood worn smooth by countless footsteps. Clara climbed, each creaking step a nail hammered into her spine. The air grew colder, more oppressive. The wind outside moaned through broken panes, but inside, the house exhaled, slow, deliberate, patient. At the landing, a long hallway stretched into darkness. One door, slightly ajar, seemed to pulse, exhaling a cold draught that carried the faint scent of lilac mixed with decay. She approached, lantern raised. The whisper turned into a chorus, overlapping voices, sorrowful, pleading. We never left, we never left. Clara forced herself inside. The room was empty, or so it seemed. Centered against the far wall was an ornate mirror, its frame twisting like vines of molten gold, curling in impossible angles. The glass was dulled by age, speckled with tarnish. But when she stepped closer, she saw them, reflections that did not belong to her. Children with hollow eyes. A woman clutching her chest as if her heart were breaking in slow motion. A man whose lips moved but made no sound. She gasped and stumbled backward, her heart thundering like a trapped bird in her chest. The reflection smiled a small, knowing curve of the lips, but it did not mirror her movement. Her breath hitched as a tremor of disbelief coursed through her. Slowly, impossibly, the figure within the glass began to lift its hand, not in mimicry, but in invitation. The air grew thick, humming with a quiet, unnatural energy that made the hairs on her arms rise. Clara felt drawn forward, helplessly, as though a string bound her heart to the glass. When her trembling fingers finally brushed its surface, she expected cold marble stillness. Instead, the mirror throbbed beneath her touch, soft, alive, pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of some sleeping thing. A warmth spread through her fingertips, up her arm, and into her chest, dizzying, intoxicating, wrong. For a heartbeat, she thought she heard a sigh, deep and low, not from her own lips, but from somewhere behind the silver. The sensation was both tender and terrifying, like being recognized by something ancient that had been waiting for her all along. The voices in the mirror grew louder, layered in a cacophony of anguish and pleading. Remember, remember, remember. Each repetition stabbed into her memory, unearthing fragments she had tried to suppress. The little girl crying in the hallway, the mother's harsh reprimands, the sound of broken glass in a kitchen she could barely recall. Every whisper pulled at her conscience. Every shadow at the edges of her vision pressed her toward confession. Tears streamed down her face. The lantern trembled in her grip, casting dancing shadows across the room. Clara fell to her knees, pressing her hands against the floorboards as if to anchor herself. She began to speak, her voice raw, choked with years of guilt. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see. Please forgive me." The mirror shimmered. The reflections softened, their eyes less accusatory, more weary, as if acknowledging her sincerity. The air lifted slightly, though the cold lingered like a persistent shadow. The whispers faded into a sigh, drifting toward the cracked ceiling, and the metallic scent in the air dulled to a faint memory of copper. Clara sat back, trembling, her face streaked with tears, lantern casting a trembling golden glow. The house was silent, yet alive, breathing softly, listening, waiting. She realized then that it wasn't haunted by malevolence alone. The manor had been carrying decades of human regret, sorrow, and lost apologies. Its whispers were a chorus of lives ignored, memories abandoned. And in the quiet that followed, Clara understood. The hollow whisper was not a threat, it was a reckoning. The house was not seeking vengeance, but recognition. It wanted to be remembered. Clara rose, unsteady but enlightened. She stepped out of the room, leaving the mirror behind, carrying with her the weight of memory she could no longer ignore. Outside, the fog clung to the manor like a shroud. The wind had stilled, the leaves rested. The garden seemed almost expectant. She knew, deep in her chest, that she would return. Not out of curiosity this time, but out of obligation to remember, to speak, to acknowledge. For the manor, the mirror, and the hollow whispers were not bound by time. They would wait, and she would answer.